I'm Daniel Negreanu, and I'm here at the Wynn Casino and Resort in Las Vegas, and I guarantee that I can take anyone and raise their level of play. I can do the same for you with the tips and strategies I've developed over the years playing against some of the world's best. I'm looking for a player that's ready to go pro. I want to teach him small ball poker. If you don't know what I'm talking about, then you're not ready to go pro. A big difference between advanced players and the pros is knowing how to avoid traps and when to set them. Stick around to see how it's done. That's Cole. Right away I knew he had that thing. You can sense it. Tell you what, this kid's pretty impressive. A couple pointers, I could really make a player out of him for sure. Cole's 22, wants to go pro, and has recently started playing in a few casino tournaments. But so far, he hasn't posted any wins. If he's up for the challenge, I can teach him strategies and tips that he won't find anywhere else. Follow along and learn how to boost yourself to the next level of play in virtually no time. Okay, Cole, I saw you down there. I know you got some skills. I know you got the fundamentals down. But there's some things you just don't know, some things the pros do, that I'm going to try to teach you. Basically, what I'm talking about is small ball, which is the art of increasing your chips without risking a lot of them. To make this strategy effective, you really want to be in there in a lot of pots, constantly putting pressure on your opponents.
That sounds almost a bit reckless, like a maniac.
You know, it does seem that way, but truthfully, what you're doing is you're risking less when you lose a pot. The beginner, they're going to come in for 5 times the blind. So if the blinds are 100, 200, a beginner's going to be betting 1,000. You're only going to throw out 500 chips, maybe 600 chips. So when you get caught, the damage won't be so severe.
Is small ball exclusive from one position, or can you do that from all of them?
You know, ideally you want to be in late position because that's the best spot, but I want you to have sort of the image of a maniac. I want you to create this crazy image where people don't know where you're at. So I want you to play all kinds of funky hands from early, middle, late. I want you to always be in there like a maniac. You're not a maniac, but if you have that perception, you can really exploit it. That's not advice I would give to a beginning or intermediate player, but you're past that point now. A beginning player, they're new to the game, so they're going to play 2-card poker, pre-flop poker, big bet poker. For you, you're going to play small ball, so you're going to make all your crucial, difficult, and marginal decisions after the flop. It's tougher, but you're ready for it.
So there's a method to the madness.
Oh, absolutely. And over the next series of tips, I'm going to give you specific pointers on how you can use small ball to improve your game.
With this lesson, Daniel really hammered home the small ball concept. He showed me that I don't need to commit all of my chips to a bluff. A smaller size bluff will work just as effectively and also allow me to be more flexible when I'm trying to bluff my opponents.
One of the first components of small ball starts before the flop, and I'm talking about blind stealing. It's really what's going to separate you from the beginner and average player, because you're going to be raising a lot less than they are in attempts to steal the blind.
True.
We talked about the beginner maybe coming in this situation with blinds of 100, 200, with a 25 ante. They're going to come in for about 1,000. There's 525 out there. They're going to risk 1,000 to win 525. You can make a smaller raise, something like 2.5 to 3 times what the big blind is. So if it's 1 in 200, that would make for about 500 or 600. The beginner, they're going to come in for about 1,000. Small ball also works best if nobody else is in yet. So in this position, let's assume everybody's folded, and now the action's on you. What do you got right here?
Let's see, got a king 5 of spades.
Okay. Well, this is not a primo hand, but since nobody's entered the pot, you're in really good position. You might think about going for a steal raise, since you only have to deal with the button and the 2 blinds. There's only 3 players left. So what are you going to do in this spot?
I'd go about 500 chips.
Okay, nice. You see, right here, you're betting 500 to win 525.
It's pretty even odds.
Let's look at some hands that you'd want to steal with in this spot. Here we've got an ace-7 offsuit. Again, not a primo hand. You have a good ace, but you don't have a very good kicker. If nobody's in, though, and you're in this position, a hand like this is perfect to steal the blinds with. If you do happen to get called, at least you have something that has some value. If an ace comes out there, well, now you've got a pair of aces. Okay, let's look at another one. Let's say, ooh, this is a fun one. 5-7 of hearts. Now, you only have 7 high, but this is a hand that has a lot of potential after flop. You can make a flush, you can make a straight, you can even make a full house on the flop. A really deceptive hand that works really, really well with small ball. If nobody's in here and you're in good steal position, what would you do?
I think I'd raise about 500 chips.
There you go. Now you're risking 500 chips to win 525 chips. That's not so bad now, is it? if somebody does call, well, now you can hit a monster hand if you make a flush or straight and get all their chips. Okay, let's look at one last one. Okay, let's say you're dealt 7-3 offsuit, nobody's in yet, and you're in the steal position. What's your play?
I'd bet another 500 chips.
I like your idea there. Unfortunately, this isn't a hand you want to do it with. One problem is this hand's too garbage, because you need to have something that plays well after the flop. Your whole style is going to be based on post-flop play, not pre-flop. A hand like this is just going to get you into too much trouble after the flop if you do get called. So now that we've talked a little bit about blind stealing, you understand how important it is to stay afloat when you're not getting any premium hands. It's definitely a tool you want to keep in your repertoire. You know, I really wanted to get Cole in a rhythm, in a right rhythm before the flop, constantly being aggressive, throwing jabs and stealing blinds. I think after I touched on that, he's really got it now. You know, you hear a lot of talk about position and how important it is. And as an advanced player, what I want to teach you is to use your position to your advantage. So really what you're going to be doing is I'm going to teach you to play your opponent's hand before yours. Let's look at an example from earlier when you had that king 5 of spades.
Okay.
You've got that king 5 of spades. Let's say you've raised. Now the big blind is called. Now the flop comes ace 8-3, which gives you absolutely nothing. You completely miss with your king 5. Let's say your opponent checks to you. What's your move?
I guess I'd check.
Well, I mean, you could check, but there's a better option available, I think. This guy doesn't know you don't have an ace. He's checked, so he's not showing any strength or any power. What we can do here is we should try to take a stab at this pot. So we're going to stick with the theme of small ball, and rather than bet the whole pot of 1,300, why don't we stick, I don't know, 800 out there?
Okay.
See, the thing here is the big blind doesn't know that we don't have it, and if he's checked, chances are he might have missed also. So with that aggressive bet, you pick yourself up a nice little pot with nothing.
Definitely.
Let's look at another example. This time, you've got the ace 7, and the flop comes down, jack 4-4. This flop doesn't hit you at all. But the chances are, neither did it hit the big blind. There's 1,300 out here. If the big blind checks to you, you're going to bet your ace 7. Again, fire out maybe 800. No need to bet the whole pot. 800 will do the same thing 1,300 would do. Now, what you're doing here is you're doing two things. One, you're protecting your ace high if it is the best hand. And two, you're getting information. If your opponent calls, well, now we know he's going to have something here. So now we're getting the hang of it. Why don't we look at one last example here? This time, we're going to give you the 5-7 of hearts.
Do that again.
And let's say the flop comes down, okay, queen 10 deuce with 2 spades. Now, as you can see, you have absolutely nothing. But the beauty of one of these hands is simple. If you would have hit a monster flop, you have a chance to knock out a home run. But even in a spot where you flop absolutely nothing, it doesn't mean you can't win this pot. If your opponent checks, by now you should know what we're going to be doing.
We're going to go 800.
Exactly. You're betting 800. Now, here's a spot where if your opponent puts any more chips in the pot, dump it.
Abort mission.
You're absolutely out of there, right. You're taking one stab at it. It's an extension of the pre-flop blind steal. We're taking one stab. Here, one more stab at the flop. If your opponent is interested, hey, you're out of there. You lose 800, 500, but done. There's no sense wasting any more chips when you've got absolutely nothing. You know, the whole theme we got here is small ball. But what I haven't even talked about is the math behind small ball is so in our favor. I want to show you a couple examples here of what I'm talking about. Let's look at the first one here. 1 in 200 blinds, quarter ante. There's a 525 out there. Let's see what you got.
Ace 10.
Okay, you got ace 10 of hearts. Well, you know how to play small ball. Go ahead.
I bet 500.
Nice. Okay, now in this situation, let's say the player behind you decides to go all in for 1,500. Okay? Everybody else folds, and now it's back to you. Here's your dilemma. You know this is a tight player. You know he's got a really good hand. So you don't think your ace 10 hearts is in the lead. But what you have to factor in now is the pot odds. So the first thing we got to do is figure out what our pot odds are. Okay? You have to call 1,000. So now we need to count up the pot. There's 1,500. 2,000 plus about 500 more. There's 2,500 in there, okay? Since you have to call 1,000, your odds are about 2.5 to 1.
That's pretty good odds, right?
That's pretty good.
Okay, even if your opponent had a pair of kings and showed it to you. You know what? Here, he does have a pair of kings and he's going to show it to you. Even in this situation, if he showed it to you, you'd still want to make the call because it's the right call. You're only about a 2-to-1 underdog against this hand, but you're getting 2.5 to 1. Now, anybody understands that that's a really good investment. Am I right?